Hey guys, Nikki here. We recently purchased a house and had some minor renovations done. We think they turned out awesome and made a huge difference in our home. So I wanted to share with you what renovations we did, why we did them, what they cost, and also some of the things that we chose not to do and pursue other solutions for. And then finally, I'll wrap up with some tips on just going through the whole construction process because I had never done it before and I'm sure there's something you can take away from our experience. So the most important change that we wanted to make had to do with the natural light in this house. I talked about it a bit when I announced that we were purchasing this house, about how we've lived in really bright houses for the last couple of years and the lighting situation in the great room was disappointing for us. So there's only 2 big windows in that room, and considering how large the room is, that's limiting. Those windows are also under a porch overhang, so you're not getting the direct sunlight that you normally would through just a normal window. Now the perk of this house is that there were some existing dormer windows directly above the existing living room windows. They were just hidden behind drywall and there was, I think, some support beams and stuff up there. They weren't even accessible from the attic. They were just totally hidden away. So we talked to a contractor about what it would take to open them up. Now it was kind of an expensive job. I think it ran us around $5,000 when all was said and done. That included opening up all of the walls, moving some stuff around, moving the ceiling fans that were in front of where those windows were and replace it with a big ceiling fan in the middle of the room. But overall, the result was fantastic. The windows allow a ton more light to come in, especially in the middle of the day when I was most disappointed by the fact that the room was dark. We also were a little bit worried about having a ton of glare coming through those windows because they're so high up. So we had our contractor put in some outlets right at the top of the windows so that we could get some motorized shades, and they close and open with the touch of a button. So as I mentioned, with the dormer change, we had to change the ceiling fans. We wanted to have a ceiling fan to help push some of the hot air down from the ceiling in the winter. We chose to go with this very modern 3-blade fan. It's one of my favorite things in the house now. It's so pretty. We run it on a really low setting just to help circulate the air, but it's become such a good focal point in that living room. And because it only has 3 blades, it doesn't hide the really pretty beams that we have on the ceiling. I find myself just like laying on the couches looking up all the time, and I really love it. So my husband and I had not lived in a ranch house as adults before. And one thing we were really worried about was how noise would carry in this house. Now we have a sunroom that's off the kitchen and we wanted to use it as a second living space. Ideally, we want to run some surround sound in there at some point, really be able to like blast the volume at night, but obviously we didn't want to wake up our daughter. So we decided to add some French doors to that area. Now, it turns out, at least in my opinion, the noise does not carry as much as I expected it to. But those French doors have given us 2 really good benefits. First of all, it allows us a space to separate our cats from eating. I haven't talked about this before, but I have one cat that he's like a raccoon or like a spy. I don't know. He's brilliant. He can open doors. All of the child locks in our old house were for him, not for our toddler. And he likes to steal his brother's food if left to his own devices. So we separate them. And then the second benefit is that the temperature in that room tends to fluctuate a lot with the outside temperature. So I'm sure in the summer it's going to get really hot. Right now, because it's winter, that room just stays perpetually very cold. I like that I can shut the doors and keep that cold air where it is and kind of insulate the rest of the house. Or again, I can open it and really try to let things circulate a bit more. The French doors that we added ended up costing us about $1,000 for the door itself, plus another $900 to install it. We also had to purchase some hardware, like the little locking mechanism. So all in all, about $2,000. So the third change we made had to do with toilet privacy. So this house has 2 master suites, both with almost identical bathrooms. One weird feature that they both had is that even though there are separate toilet areas, neither of them had doors. Now, I don't know about y'all, but my husband and I are just not like door open while using the bathroom people. Like we just like to keep that part separate. So we really wanted to add doors. Adding the toilet doors cost about $1,400, and that included both the doors themselves and the labor. Now also in the second primary suite, the shower did not have a door. I think I mentioned this in the video where I announced that we were buying this house, but all of the doorways and the hallways in this house are wide enough to be wheelchair accessible. was great for movers, and it does make the house feel very spacious. I think that was the bathroom that was intended to be wheelchair accessible in this house. So it just had a shower curtain. We wanted to add doors that matched the one in our bathroom. So our contractor was able to match it pretty closely. The good thing though is he put the door near the shower controls so that you're not having to like lean into the water in order to turn it on or off, which I really appreciate. So to get that shower door installed was about $1,500. That price did include the shower door itself and the labor. So another little quirk of this house is that it had some inconsistent recessed lighting. So almost every room had recessed lights except for the sunroom and one of the bedrooms, which we just thought was strange. Like, why not just do it everywhere if you were putting them in almost everywhere? Anyway, so we added lights in those two rooms. We added 6 lights to the sunroom and 4 lights to our daughter's bedroom. They are different lights than what we have in our other bedrooms, but to be honest, I'd rather just have the lights than have like a few rooms that don't have them, but like all the light matches, if that makes any sense at all. We also swapped out all of the light bulbs, so at the end of the day, they all kind of match now, even if the fixtures are very slightly different. So recessed lights that we added came out to about $200 per can light. And that includes all of the work to like smooth out the ceiling afterwards, you know, all the electrical work, all that good stuff. In hindsight, I think that price was a little high after I talked to some other folks that were doing similar renovations at the time. But they did turn out really nice, and we added some dimmer switches in certain spots. So at the end of the day, it's done and the lights look good. So one other thing that we were a little worried about when we bought this house is we really like more modern houses. Certain elements of this house felt really old despite it being a 2018 build. The house had this really brown stone fireplace, which is just not our vibe. It doesn't feel very modern. So what we opted to do was paint the fireplace white. And I'll be honest, I was really skeptical about the white, especially because we were planning to paint the whole room white and I thought it would look sterile. I don't think that it turned out looking sterile at all though. I actually really like it. We also stained the mantle a darker wood color to match the ceiling beams, which I do think helps bring in that warmth. I'm really curious what you guys think in the comments though, so let me know. Another change that we made to kind of like up the swag factor, make it more modern, was that we painted all of our interior side of our windows black. Previously they were a tan color. We would have changed them regardless because the tan just looked kind of funky. White would have looked nice, but black really made it pop. I like to joke that having black windows is like giving your house eyeliner. Like, it just kind of draws your attention to the windows and how beautiful everything is outside. And this house has a beautiful yard, so I do want to see it even when I'm inside. I think that change was really cool. Definitely have professional painters do that though, because they need to prime it a certain way if you're painting vinyl windows, just to make sure you don't run into issues later. And one thing I've always thought made a house feel like it had swag is under and over cabinet lighting. Like, under cabinet lighting is common because it's a task lighting thing. So we knew we wanted to add that regardless, but I've always liked upper cabinet lighting. Now, in a lot of homes where they add it, there's not a ton of space between the top of the cabinets and the ceiling. So you get this really distinct glow. Ours, because the ceilings are so tall, it doesn't have that like sharp glow, but it basically just lights up the whole room. It's really pretty. And I think it adds a lot to the space. So our under and over cabinet lighting ran us $1,800 for both. So that included kind of going through the wall, hooking up all the electrical, placing all of the lights. Now, one thing it did cause though was it quite literally shined a light on a settlement line in the wall above the kitchen that we ended up having to pay to fix. I mean, we could have left it, but it was a very obvious line. I think we ended up paying our contractor about $1,000 to just really mud over that whole area, smooth it all out again, and then, you know, have it repainted. So it was a lot of money, but I think it turned out really nice in the end. One of the last changes that we made was to add exterior lights. So we have a nice outdoor space in our yard. Instead of just grass, we also have this very large patio area that we're hoping to entertain on in the evenings. But the house had no exterior lights when we moved in, so it was really difficult to go outside because you couldn't see anything. We ended up adding 3 lights outside. They ran us about $1,000. Again, in hindsight, I think this would have been way cheaper, like half the price, to just go directly through an electrician. Lesson learned for next time. But I think they turned out fine. We also made some less obvious changes. We added an outlet in our bathroom, and then we fixed a bunch of little issues from our inspection. Like, there was a small gap in the ceiling tiles at the peak of one of the roof lines, and then We had to fix the way that the kitchen electrical was run, and there's a lot of little things. So now let's talk about some of the things that we did not do, but that we did consider. So a big one for us was adding a coat closet. For all the space in this house, we have no closets that are not inside of bedrooms, which is a little strange. We do have a nice coat rack area at the front door that the previous owners left for us, but we were really hoping for some sort of closet. It was gonna cost like $3,000 to do it. So because we weren't entirely sure that it was the right thing to do, we opted not to for the time being. I think in the interim, we're gonna end up getting an armoire of some kind from like Wayfair or IKEA or something that we can either put in the foyer or near the garage door, since that's typically where we enter and exit the house from anyway. And I think that'll be a fine temporary solution until we know for sure if we want a closet. This was a big one for me. All right, so I'm over here near my garage. It's right here. And we have a switch here now, but it's actually a smart switch, so we're gonna ignore it. So when I come in from the garage, the closest light switch is right here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my ceiling lights and my island lights, right? Now, if I was gonna turn on anything on the living room side, the only light switch access is way across this room. And that's where I can control my ceiling lights here. Now, again, here you can see the garage on the right and the light switch for the kitchen all the way over on the left. You cannot control the kitchen lights from the bedroom area over there. Those switches are things that we added later, and those are also smart switches. But it would be ideal to be able to turn off lights behind you as you're kind of walking through the kitchen at night. So we came up with the smart switch idea because it prevented us from having to rewire every light in this entire room, which, since we've got 15 recessed lights in here, as well as, you know, the island lights and things like that, it would have been really expensive. So this was much cheaper and a much better way for us to go. And then when you're over here trying to leave, or if you're trying to go to bed, because it works the same way there, all you have to do is hold down this one switch and it turns off the entire room, which is way easier than it would have been to turn off like 4 different switches, even if we had wired everything the right way. We probably still spent, if I'm being honest, between $500 and $1,000 on all the supplies for that. If you really want to deep dive, I'll have to dig through our Amazon account for those numbers and walk you through kind of how he did it all. But it was definitely worth it. We have a lot more flexibility than we would have if we had gone with the contractor lighting. So as an example, we are bright white people, especially during the day, but in the evening, it's nice to be able to flip that to soft white. And so we can do all of that at like the click of a button instead of, you know, changing out light bulbs and stuff like that. So I think it worked out for the best. All right, so let's talk about things that we learned along the way. Maybe my most important tip, go to the house literally every day if you can. There were so many small things that we caught, like when we added the recessed lights, they had to change the light switch plates to these horizontal ones. And we wanted to make sure the fan controls were on the horizontal switches and the recessed lights were on the vertical one. And they did it wrong in our daughter's room, so we had to have them change it. Or like the lock on the sunroom was initially backwards. Like, it's little things like that that you're just not gonna notice if you're not there all the time. Whereas if you are there, you can catch it early, you can ask them about it. And then also, when they see you there every day, I think they honestly work a little bit faster and harder. We noticed that when we left for the holidays and we were busy right when we came back, things just stalled out and took a lot longer than they did on the front half of our renovation. If you're not happy with something, speak up. We probably had our contractor redo the drywall patching like 10 times because there were certain areas that just kept looking bumpy to us. We were really unhappy with it. We knew we were gonna be staring at it all the time being like, why didn't we have him fix it? So we pushed and pushed and pushed until we finally got the result that we were happy with. I don't know if our contractor hates us, but we are happy as the customer. So one thing that I'm pretty annoyed about actually is that our contractor did not tell us when certain things were an issue unless we brought it up. So when we put in our toilet doors, they had to open up the doorway slightly larger than it was before. I was not aware of this. And so I went into our bathroom after our renovation was complete and I looked down, because for some reason I never really looked down before this point. And I noticed that there were spots where the tile had previously been cut for the original door frame and it was now exposed. And it looks terrible. We had the same thing happen in the living room with our wood floors where we suddenly had an open spot. Now we caught the wood floor one first and had them fix it. It cost like $400 for them to fix it. And when I discovered the bathroom floor, we just decided to leave it as is. We think long term we might do some bathroom renovations anyway, and so I figure I'll just fix it then, because I just don't think that that small spot is worth the probably like, hundreds and hundreds of dollars that it's going to cost to get it fixed. I'll just live with it until then. So also, in-person conversations are really helpful. I felt like I was bothering my contractor sometimes when I was texting him or calling him, not because of how he reacted, but I think I was just in my head about it. But when we asked to meet him in person and we would walk him through why something was a problem, it seemed like it resonated better on both sides, and we all left feeling like we had a plan that we agreed upon. Another thing that I would tell people is don't trust the end dates that they give you. In your head, kind of double it and expect that it could take up to that amount of time. Now, not to say you shouldn't try to hold your contractor to the dates they quote, but just be realistic. We ended up having to push our move date out a week because of some of the things that we added to the construction list along the way, but also things where our contractor just frankly took a lot longer than we planned. And some of that was the areas on the wall that just were not smooth enough for what we wanted. And then also make sure to think about every detail. So when we ordered that really cool ceiling fan, one thing I didn't really think about was the fact that I needed a pole for the ceiling fan. And I didn't realize that when I ordered it, it came with a 6-inch pole, but when you have like 20-foot ceilings or whatever the heck is in that room, you need a much longer pole, otherwise it's not gonna look good. So I ordered one way later than I should have. It got lost in the mail. And then our contractor ended up using one of the poles from our previous ceiling fan. It worked out okay in the long run, but it delayed us by about a week. And in that span of a week, we had scaffolding sitting in our living room, and because we got delayed, they had to pay for another week of using that scaffolding and cost me an extra $400. It was really annoying. It helped our painters out a lot because they were able to use it for those tall ceilings. But it's money that I feel like I threw down the drain because I didn't think about the pole. So anyways, I hope this video was really helpful and let you see what a renovation actually looks like, how small changes that you make can actually make a really big difference in the long run. And yeah, I'd love to hear in the comments if you're planning any sort of renovation on your house or just cosmetic changes that you're doing to avoid doing a renovation, like what we did with the light switches in our great room. If you liked this video, thank you so much for watching, and please consider subscribing. I will see you next time.